everyone, on this YouTube video today, we're returning to the Monsterverse, I say, so one could say Skar King is now on the way. During this video today, we're making a Skar King skeleton, you might say. And while I craft away at this Kaiju skeleton today, we'll be doing a deep dive on this Hollow Earth movie monster today, I do say. As a leader and a ruler, the Skar King is absolutely one of the most evil kaijus the Monsterverse has ever bared witness to. And thanks to the novel for Godzilla x Kong, we have brand new details and an in-depth look at his leadership. So now we have true insight on the level of cruelty and depravity that the Skar King put his people through. So, just how cruel was Skar King's system of leadership? And how did he actively abuse all the other great apes? As well as Shimo, the Ice Titan. Skar King is a much different style antagonist than previous Monsterverse villains, who usually demonstrate a much more physically imposing stature. Until now, most of the Monsterverse Titans have been strictly physical, threatening to overpower Godzilla or King Kong, and ultimately kill them. But the Skar King is a little different. He is much more strategic than strictly physical. A manipulator who can bend situations and individuals to his will. He has an entire community following him, and is much more intelligent than most of the other Titans. However, his people do not follow him willingly. And the novelization goes to great lengths to explain just how imprisoned they were. They follow the Skar King only because they have to, due to the fact that he holds all the power to keep them subjugated. But how bad were these conditions under the Skar King? So one could say we'll be going over the Skar King's governing style today, I do say. So we'll be primarily focusing on Zuko's first-hand account and what life was like living under this tyrannical leader. The primary driving force behind his grab for power is the Skar King's ability to control food, and his ability to instill fear and weakness within the community. His people are intentionally starved, and this is deliberate on the Skar King's end in order to keep them working harder, for the hopes that they may be tossed a few scraps. When Zuko is guiding Kong back to the lair of the Skar King, he seems actively afraid to eat any of the food that Kong offers, as if he is afraid to get in trouble for eating. And the novel confirms this, because the idea of being freely offered food is unfortunately completely foreign to him. The novel dives much deeper into the psychology of the Skar King. It even states that his behavior is highly unusual, and he notes that to Zuko, being offered food is a bad thing. Zuko thinks that this is a trick, which is heavily influenced by his own affinity for deception and subterfuge, which he developed as a survival tactic in order to get by. But when he finally does take the food, he runs off, then begins to devour it like a savage. And even Kong remarks that it looks like he hasn't eaten in several day-night cycles. He is afraid of having his food taken from him, which we learn later on this is the defining trait of the Skar King society. It's also very apparent when you see Kong standing next to the other Hollow Earth apes, because you can see just how much larger he is than everybody else. This is because he grew up on Skull Island, where he only had himself to answer to as king, and he was allowed to eat anything that he could capture. Not only did he not have to share, but he didn't have to listen to any arbitrary rules saying when he could and could not eat. So as a result, Kong is able to grow much stronger and larger than all the other great apes. Not to mention, he has also been in more battles. Now, unfortunately, we also know that the Skar King keeps his own harem of female apes, so there's reason to believe that he is the only one that's permitted to breed and reproduce. As we see in his community, we see several great ape children under the care of the elders, but all of them seem to be marked by a distinct red hue, and all the adult apes are a darker shade of gray. But the youth seem to share Skar King's fur color, indicating that he mates with whoever he wants, then giving over the children to the rest of the tribe to care for. Zuko even states that he knew all the apes, including the females that the Skar King kept for himself, which unfortunately confirms this theory. We also know that he is physically abusive to anyone who disobeys his commands, and these are threats that Zuko specifically cites on being most afraid of, with Zuko being worried in the novel because he can't handle massive amounts of trauma. In the novelization, we get a glimpse of what happened to Zuko before he was sent out, with the rest of the search party that Kong encounters. It was just before this voyage he was promoted to a red stripe, otherwise known as an ape worthy of joining hunts, outside of the cave. This group of red stripes acts as the Skar King's personal guard, and the only explorationers that could explore the rest of the Hollow Earth. When the Skar King first approaches Zuko, he is immediately afraid of having drawn the Skar King's attention, because he knows he's about to be hit, kicked, or bitten, indicating that this is a common practice, showing that the Skar King has no qualms being physically abusive, in order to keep the subjects in line. Over the years, Zuko and these apes have developed instincts in order to help them survive. Zuko's instincts around Skar King tell him to be afraid, to defend himself, or run and hide until his wrath is over. And these don't simply develop overnight. They are the result of a prolonged pattern of abuse and physical trauma that has beaten the truth so deep in Zuko's subconscious, to the point his body reacts without him meaning to. This is before we even get into talking into Shimo herself, who seems to be getting the worst out of them all. Skar King keeps a blue crystal at the end of his whip and uses this item to inflict direct pain onto Shimo whenever she disobeys him, essentially being like a primordial Hollow Earth shock collar, which nobody else can endure. She is the only one in the colony that seems to be actively kept in chains and receives the worst of the Skar King's punishment. Her disobedience is caused by direct physical punishment, and it's even strong enough to incapacitate Shimo. And just a brief reminder, she is a alpha level titan. We all know that Shimo is responsible for causing the last ice age, and has frozen over entire continents very rapidly. So the idea that there is a weapon that can bend her will to his shows how intelligent and menacing the Skar King truly is. This is the predominant reason that so many of the apes were willing and eager to change sides so quickly. And this is why Kong had such an easy time assuming control over the tribe. When he first arrives, he shows a combination of strengths, which Skar King also demonstrates, only on a more sinister manner, where compared to Kong, he shows compassion. After Kong beats one of the apes, he offers him a hand back up, and he only fights defensively when absolutely necessary. It's immediately apparent to the rest of the tribe that Kong doesn't take pride or joy in hurting others, but he has the strength to defend himself and his people if necessary. They know this, and they understand that the Skar King is not meant to be trusted, and he is severely unstable and can lash out at any moment. The novel even hints at, with his old age, he's starting to go slightly insane and becoming more unstable, becoming much more power-hungry over the eons. However, Shimo shows more resistance than anyone else to Skar King, and despite being the most easily controlled. But this is a dire side effect of her societal conditioning. Shimo is the one that will speak out the most, but also suffers the most, since the apes such as Zuko are now old enough to be branded as red stripes. We get the idea that this has been going on for a very long time. The Skar King has found out a way to systematically wear down their resilience until they submit. But little did the Skar King know that he was digging his own grave. After being confronted in Brazil, the Skar King loses control over Shimo, who immediately sets her eyes on him. And for very good reason, because the Skar King has gone out of his way to kill those who revolt against him, beheading them, then putting them on display for the rest of the tribe. He is definitely the definition of cruel and evil. Some have even suggested that he is more evil than King Ghidorah, which I think is debatable, but let me know what you think in the comments below. The biggest sign of the cruelty of the Skar King is how quickly his colony turns against him, and the conditions that they've been living in for centuries. And now finally, the great ape colony is properly fed, and they will be led rather than ruled. A fear of physical retaliation. The novel makes it clear this is the twilight of the Skar King, and the colony is ready to turn against him. He is a true evil emperor. Anyways, everyone, I would like to know what your thoughts are on the system and leadership of the Skar King. How do you think the Skar King and leaders like him are able to get so many people to bend to their will, based on fear and physical retaliation? Also, what are your thoughts on the Great Ape Colony, ready to turn against the Skar King if a greater leader revealed himself instantly? Why did they begin to follow the Skar King in the first place if he was demented and abusive? How do you think Kong will right the wrongs, and perhaps become a major threat to Godzilla in the future? And what are your thoughts on the novel on the small insights that we get on the Skar King? Now that the deep dive on the Monsterverse Monsterverse is done, it's time for some build rundown fun, where today one could say we built Skar King's skeleton, I say, which will serve as the base frame for our armature stop-motion doll. The materials used were aluminum armature wire, aluminum foil to help save weight and clay, and oven-baked clay to make those bones, I say, and some plasticine clay to make sure the joints will stay. We also painted the skull today, so I'm happy to say the skeleton is completely ready for plasticine clay. So stay tuned for part 2, I say, where we'll be adding clay to the Skar King, I say, making this skeleton look a little less creepy, you might say, and continuing our deep dive on this character along the way. So if you enjoyed this video today, be sure to atomic blast away at that like button, I say. Comment below what you think, share with your monster and dinosaur loving friends, and subscribe if you're new. I just want you all to know that your support is highly appreciated and you're the reason I work so hard on creating this content and all these different, well, variations of monsters and claymation creatures. And if by chance you haven't seen any of the new and latest animations, be sure to check out the links below, yo! There you will find the lost footage of the man in the suit, which was included in today's intro, and legendary Godzilla vs. -1 and Shin Godzilla. Anyways, that's enough from me today. Take it away, little clay me, I say. Hey, thanks for sticking around to the very end of the video. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed the content, comment below what you think, share with your friends, and perhaps consider subscribing if any. Anyway, that's enough from me. Till next time, take it easy.